The fate of the 2024 presidential election may very well hinge on an upcoming, relatively low-profile election in Wisconsin. So next weekend, I'm taking a trip to the Badger State. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe, and enjoy the video. All right, folks, it's March 2023. Midterms are over, and I'm sure most of you thought, it's not election season anymore. We don't have to worry about elections and ballots and campaigning and canvassing until at least later on this year at the very earliest, once the 2024 presidential election cycle gets started. Unfortunately, that's not quite correct. Even though the midterms are over, there is an extremely important, relatively low-profile election out of Wisconsin that may have an outsized impact on the 2024 presidential election. And it is a Wisconsin State Supreme Court election, right? So not even a governorship or anything else, or, a state legislature race. It is for the state Supreme Court. And we'll get into why it's so important and why it was very important in 2020, and how that kind of set the forecast for 2023. So Wisconsin State Supreme Court has 7 justices, and unlike the United States Supreme Court, their state Supreme Court justices are elected by popular vote. Okay, so the residents of Wisconsin, the citizens of Wisconsin get to vote. Now, the elections are technically nonpartisan, so people who are running for office, they don't run as Republican or Democrat, but based on their stated values, based on their campaign ads, based on, discussions and interviews and debates and whatever record that they may have, as an attorney or prosecutor or whatever kind of judge, you can tell, relatively speaking, who's who. If they lean conservative, if they lean more liberal or progressive. And the candidates for this particular race are a Trump-backed candidate, Daniel Kelly. We'll get into him. And a relatively liberal nominee named Janet Protasevich. Okay. And I'll also say that it's 7 justices, and they serve 10-year terms. Okay. So it's a big deal. So it's not a short term at all. The reason that this is so important was because of 2020. So in 2020, the Trump campaign attempted to get like 221,000 Wisconsin votes thrown out, right, disqualified, which would have potentially flipped the state from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. So Joe Biden won Wisconsin, and he won their 10 electoral votes, okay? And the Trump campaign filed in their 60 lawsuits, right? It was lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit in a gazillion states, attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Wisconsin, which is a battleground state, it's really important, that was one of the states that they filed suit. And they attempted to get 221,000 votes thrown out. And a lot of people were really, really worried about this because there were 7 justices on the court, and 4 of them were considered conservative, right? And so, not that there were any guarantees, but that would suggest that they would be sympathetic to a Republican president's attempt to overturn the results of an election. So obviously you had the 3 liberal justices say, listen, this is ridiculous. There's been no credible evidence that there was any, malfeasance or mischief in terms of those particular ballots. And one of the conservative justices sided with those liberal justices. And so in a 4-3 ruling, the Wisconsin's 3 liberal judges were joined by a conservative swing justice, Brian Hagedorn, who said 3 of Trump's 4 claims were filed too late, and the other was without merit. The ruling ends Trump's legal challenges in the Supreme Court. And again, Trump was trying to make the case that those 221,000 ballots were cast under conditions that basically were because of the pandemic, that Wisconsin's government made certain exceptions to accommodate people during the pandemic. Therefore, those 221,000 ballots should be thrown out. And the 3 liberal judges shot it down, and 1 conservative swing judge said the same thing. So Wisconsin was saved by the skin of its teeth. And there's been other articles like one of the judges, one of the current judges, Karofsky, Jill Karofsky. She's written articles in Slate about the consequences that she endured, the personal and reputational consequences that she endured from very upset Republicans and conservatives, not even in just Wisconsin, but all across the country because of her decision to reject Trump's attempts to overturn the election. I mean, threats and harassment, email, phone. Somebody filed a formal complaint against her as well, and it never went anywhere. It was eventually dismissed after 16 months, but it's a pretty big deal. Additionally, Wisconsin was also a predicate for Trump's attempts to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. So after the Wisconsin Supreme Court threw it out, the Trump administration attempted to appeal to the United States Supreme Court, and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and a couple of other states were the things that they cited. Like, hey, look, pandemic era laws helped Joe Biden win the election. That's not right, and it happened in Wisconsin. It happened in Pennsylvania, and so it made this particular situation made its way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, but they tossed it out. They declined to hear. So that ended, Trump's attempts legally at both the state and federal level to overturn the result of the election. So you think, okay, well, the guardrails held, we justice held, election integrity held, democracy held. What's the big deal? Well, the guy who's running to fill this vacancy in the Supreme Court, the Wisconsin Supreme Court, his name is Daniel Kelly, and he was involved. He's credibly connected to an attempt by the Trump administration to create fake electors. So you remember in some of the videos that we've done, and I'm sure in some of the January 6th coverage that you've seen, the Trump administration was involved in some crazy harebrained schemes to try to overturn the election. Not only did they file lawsuits, they also attempted other shenaniganry, like trying to push Vice President Mike Pence to just disregard votes that Trump didn't like, but also to collaborate with various Republican officials in various states to just send alternate electors, because of course, for the Electoral College to convene, designated electors have to go to Washington, D.C. during the certification of the electoral ballots and turn them over. Hey, look, Wisconsin, we're Wisconsin's Electoral College delegation. Here are 10 electoral ballots. They're for Joe Biden. And so Trump tried to send fake electors, people who just go there and undesignated electors, people who are not actual state electors, and just declare Trump the winner. And Daniel Kelly was involved with that. Conservative connections to a plan to reverse 2020 elections results will face liberal Janet Protasevich in an April 4th election. That's scary. The fact that this guy was involved or connected to in any way with a scheme to defraud the American public, which is basically what that would be. If Joe Biden credibly and legally, by the laws of the Wisconsin Supreme Court and other things, by their determination, if he wins the 10 electoral ballots, and you're just going to try to get people to go in and cast ballots for the other guy anyway, you'd be defrauding not only Wisconsin, but the American public. And this guy was connected with a scheme to do that. He's unqualified. He should be nowhere near the highest court in any state. I mean, really any court, but certainly not the highest court in a particular state, certainly not a battleground state like Wisconsin. So it's extremely important that this guy, Daniel Kelly, be nowhere near the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So obviously we have to back Janet Protasevich. I'll also just point out, just for the kind of sake of convenience here, that Republicans in Wisconsin, they have a particularly strong anti-democratic strain in them. So a guy who ran for governor in 2022 during the midterms, Tim Michels, he was quoted as saying that Democrats will never win another election in Wisconsin if a Republican governor is nominated. They're going to do everything in their power to keep Democrats from ever winning future elections. And as a matter of fact, not only did the Republican candidate for governor lose, and so a Democrat is governor of Wisconsin, thank God, but the Wisconsin state legislature votes, which also occurred during the 2022 midterms, I think they're one vote short of a supermajority that would allow them to override a Democratic governor. So that's how tense things are in Wisconsin. You have a sizable Republican majority in the state legislature, and they're just a few votes away from having a supermajority that would allow them to veto a good faith Democratic governor. So all of this is to say that Wisconsin is a hotbed. It's a powder keg, politically speaking, and we need to do everything in our power to secure it for the left and for Democrats, ultimately for democracy, right? So that's why I'm next weekend, I will be in Wisconsin. I'll be in the Badger State with an organization called Progress Libs that I worked with here in North Carolina and also in Georgia as well. It's led by Maya, a.k.a. Femboy Maths on Twitter. She's got a big following. She's this really kick-ass young trans activist. She actually went viral dunking on Charlie Kirk, the popular dangerously popular conservative commentator, Charlie Kirk. It was a great video. And she's a really good organizer. She's got a really good group together. And other streamers are going as well. So people, like a lot of people in Destiny's orbit, for example, like Cherry and Sansol, they are also going to be there either in the weekends before, or I think Cherry's going to be there the weekend that I'm there. But it's a big deal. This is really, really important. So if you know anybody in Wisconsin, or if you're in a position to go out and help canvass, knock on doors, and make Wisconsin residents aware that this isn't just, I mean, it would be important enough to Wisconsin residents if it were just a Supreme Court election and that was it, right? Because your state Supreme Court's really important to you. But this is going to have national implications, because we have no reason to believe that Daniel Kelly wouldn't be sympathetic to another attempt. I mean, Trump's running for office in 2024, so he may very well attempt the same thing. And we have no reason to believe that a candidate who was, number one, extreme when he ran for office in 2020 or 2022. Now, he ran in 2020, I think, for state office. He was extremely dangerous then, extremely extreme. I mean, very radical. Now he's running to be on the highest court in the state, and he was connected with a plot to overturn the results of election, just again by defrauding Wisconsin residents and the American people. This guy cannot be allowed anywhere near the highest court in Wisconsin. So making people in Wisconsin aware of that, like, hey, look, this dude's just a bad news, period. But he's very probably bad news for the entire country, especially in 2024. So it is extremely important that Janet Protasevich win this race. Her record and her odds are really, really good. But I definitely want to go in there, knock on doors. It's going to be cold, from what I can tell. It's not going to be you're not in the Caribbean, you're not near the equator, right? It's going to be chilly, but it's really, really important. This is a big deal, even though it may not seem like it. So, and honestly, outside of the 2024 election, there are other relevant issues that impact people in Wisconsin. So Daniel Kelly, he's an extremely regressive religious conservative. He has no interest in preserving abortion rights or anything like that. So you can bet that if he becomes a swing vote, or if he helps secure a conservative majority in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, that the state will see credible challenges to abortion rights in the state, gerrymandering, issues like that. They'll do everything in their power. Again, this is the state Republican Party is doing everything in its power to, in their own words, make sure that a Democrat never wins an election in the state again. That's not good faith. That can't be abided. That can't be tolerated. So if you can, get out and canvass, or if you know anybody who lives in Wisconsin, I mean, try to spread the word as much as possible. This is a big deal. Democracy is on the line. Hey, you. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.